Quadruplets born premature. She begs Millionaire X for blood transfusion. He discovers they're his children. 18 months of silence shattered the moment Isadora Salas walked into Dashiell Thorne's corner office. The last time he'd seen her, he was walking away from their relationship, choosing his company over their love. Now she stood before him, different, stronger, desperate, with words that would change his life forever. For premature babies lay dying in the NICU at St. Catherine's Hospital. Luna, Nova, Sage, and River, born at 28 weeks, fighting for every breath, needing immediate blood transfusions to survive. Their rare AB-negative blood type had left doctors with only one compatible donor in the entire region, Dashiell Thorne. But as Isadora stood in his glass tower, begging the man who'd abandoned her to save 4 children he'd never met, she carried a secret that would shatter everything he thought he knew about his life. Those babies weren't just patients needing his blood, they were his children, conceived in love 18 months ago and carried in secrecy ever since. In the next 60 minutes, a millionaire who'd built his empire on control would discover that the most important investment of his life was 4 tiny heartbeats he'd never known existed. Have you ever had to swallow your pride to save someone you love? Have you ever had to face the person who shattered your heart when everything you hold dear hangs in the balance? Tonight, we're exploring a story about the lengths a mother will go to save her children. What happens when your baby's lives depend on the man who abandoned you? When the only person who can save them is the person who destroyed you? Isadora thought she'd moved on from Dashiell until her children's survival depended on his blood. Can love be reborn in a hospital room? Can a man's heart change when faced with his own mortality reflected in 4 tiny faces? Stay with me, because this story will challenge everything you believe about second chances. If stories about unconditional love and the power of family move your soul, hit that like button now. And if you believe in the transformative power of parenthood, subscribe to Lux Love Chronicles with Mr. Wentworth for more stories that will restore your faith in love's ability to heal. The contractions had started at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday, 18 weeks too early, ripping through Isadora Salas's body with the ferocity of lightning. She'd been working late in her small art studio, putting finishing touches on a commissioned piece that would help pay next month's rent, when the first wave of pain brought her to her knees. This can't be happening, she whispered to herself, clutching her enormously swollen belly. Not yet. It's too soon. At 28 weeks pregnant with quadruplets, she knew every day in the womb was crucial for her baby's survival. She'd read every medical journal, consulted with specialists, done everything possible to carry them to term. But her body, exhausted from the demands of nurturing 4 growing lives, had apparently reached its limit. The drive to St. Catherine's Medical Center was a blur of agony and terror. Isadora's neighbor, Mrs. Chun, had found her doubled over in the hallway and driven her to the hospital while calling ahead to the maternity ward. Every bump in the road sent fresh waves of pain through her body, each contraction a reminder that her children were fighting to enter a world they weren't ready for. "We need Dr. Cross immediately," the triage nurse called out as they wheeled Isadora into the emergency room. 28 weeks, quadruplets, active labor. Dr. Amara Cross appeared within minutes, her calm competence providing the first moment of reassurance Isadora had felt since the contractions began. She was a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and steady hands, the kind of doctor who inspired confidence even in the most terrifying circumstances. "Isadora, I'm Dr. Cross. I'm going to take excellent care of you and your babies," she said, checking the fetal monitors. "How are you feeling?" "Scared," Isadora admitted, gripping the hospital bed rails. "It's too early. They're not ready. 28 weeks is challenging, but we have excellent success rates with babies born at this stage. The NICU team is already preparing, and we're going to do everything possible to give your children the best start. All 4 of them. They're all going to make it. We're going to fight for every one of them." The emergency C-section was scheduled immediately. As they wheeled her toward the operating room, Isadora felt the weight of single motherhood pressing down on her like a physical force. There was no partner to hold her hand, no father pacing the waiting room, no family to share this moment of terror and joy. 18 months ago, she'd imagined this moment differently. She'd pictured Dashiell beside her, his strong hand in hers, his voice whispering encouragement as they welcomed their children together. But that fantasy had died the day he'd walked out of her life without a backward glance, choosing his company over their relationship when crisis forced him to make a choice. "Are you ready, Isadora?" Dr. Cross asked as they positioned her on the operating table. "As ready as I can be to meet my babies." The surgery felt like both an eternity and an instant. Through the fog of anesthesia and overwhelming emotion, she heard the sounds that would change her life forever, for tiny cries, each one a miracle, each one a fighter declaring their intention to survive. "Luna," Dr. Cross announced as the first baby emerged. 2 pounds, 3 ounces. Nova came next. 2 pounds, 1 ounce. Sage, the third miracle. 1 pound, 15 ounces. And River, the final baby. 1 pound, 12 ounces. For perfect, impossibly small human beings who carried her heart, and, though she tried not to think about it, their father's dark hair and strong jawline. "Can I see them?" Isadora asked through tears of exhaustion and joy. "Briefly, then they need to go to the NICU immediately." The glimpse she got was enough to imprint their faces in her memory forever, for tiny fighters with their eyes closed, their chests rising and falling with determination, their miniature hands curled into fists as if already prepared to battle the world. "They're beautiful," she whispered. "They're perfect. They're fighters, just like their mother," Dr. Cross said gently. "Now let's get them the specialized care they need." Recovery from the C-section was a blur of pain medication and anxious updates from the NICU. For the first 48 hours, the news was cautiously optimistic. All 4 babies were breathing with assistance. Their vital signs were stable, and their responses were stronger than expected for their gestational age. Isadora spent every waking moment she was allowed in the NICU, talking to her children through the plastic walls of their incubators, singing lullabies she'd hummed to them in the womb, willing them to keep fighting. Luna, the biggest of the 4, seemed to be the leader, moving more, responding more quickly to touch and sound. Nova was quieter but steady, her breathing patterns the most consistent. Sage was the observer, her eyes opening more frequently than her siblings, already seeming to study her new world. River, the smallest, was also the most determined, his grip surprisingly strong when she managed to slip her finger through the incubator opening. "They know you're here," Nurse Kira Valdez told her on the 3rd day. "Premature babies are incredibly responsive to their mother's voices and touch. Will they be okay? Really okay? They're exceeding all our expectations." Dr. Cross is very optimistic about their prognosis. It was on the 4th day that everything changed. Isadora was holding a pumped bottle of breast milk, preparing for Luna's feeding, when alarms began blaring throughout the NICU. Not just one baby's monitors, but all 4. "What's happening?" she demanded as medical staff rushed to her children's incubators. "Their hemoglobin levels are dropping rapidly," Dr. Cross explained, her calm demeanor now edged with urgency. "All 4 babies are developing severe anemia. It's not uncommon in extreme prematures, but this is happening faster than we anticipated." "What does that mean?" "It means they need immediate blood transfusions to survive. Without healthy red blood cells, their organs can't get the oxygen they need. Then do the transfusions. Whatever they need." "Isadora, there's a complication. Your babies have AB-negative blood, which is extremely rare, less than 1% of the population. Our blood bank doesn't have enough compatible blood for 4 transfusions." The words hit her like physical blows. After fighting so hard to bring her children into the world, after watching them exceed every expectation, they might die from something as simple as incompatible blood. "What are our options?" "We've contacted every blood bank in a 3-state radius. We've put out emergency calls to medical facilities nationwide." Dr. Cross paused, consulting her tablet. "There is one compatible donor in our emergency database, someone local who's registered for organ and blood donation." "Who?" "Dashiell Thorne. His blood type and genetic markers make him a perfect match for transfusion. The genetic compatibility suggests he could be closely related to the babies." The name hit Isadora like lightning, 18 months of carefully constructed walls crumbling in an instant. Dashiell Thorne, the man who'd shared her bed and her dreams, who'd promised her forever and then walked away when his company faced a hostile takeover. The man who had no idea he'd left her pregnant with quadruplets. "There has to be someone else," she whispered. "Mrs. Salas, we've exhausted every other option. Mr. Thorne's blood is not just compatible, it's nearly identical to your baby's genetic markers. He's their only chance. How long do we have? Hours, not days. The baby's hemoglobin levels are dropping dangerously low. Without transfusions soon, their organs will begin failing." Isadora sank into a chair, the weight of impossible choices crushing down on her. Contact the man who destroyed her heart? Beg for help from someone who'd made it clear she wasn't worth fighting for? Face the father of her children who didn't even know they existed? "Dr. Cross, if I contact Mr. Thorne, if he agrees to donate, will the babies be okay?" "With his blood, yes. The transfusions should stabilize them completely. They'll still need weeks in the NICU, but their prognosis would be excellent. And if I don't contact him?" The doctor's silence was answer enough. "I need his contact information." That night, alone in her small apartment for the first time since giving birth, Isadora stared at Dashiell's business card, a pristine white rectangle with elegant black lettering that had somehow survived 18 months in her jewelry box, buried beneath keepsakes she couldn't bring herself to throw away. Dashiell Thorne, Chief Executive Officer, Thorne Enterprises. She remembered the day he'd given it to her, early in their relationship when she teased him about being too formal to just put his number in her phone like a normal person. "I'm not a normal person," he'd said with that devastating smile that had undone her from the first moment she'd seen it. "I'm a man who believes in making lasting impressions." He'd certainly made a lasting impression. 18 months later, she was still trying to recover from the impact he'd had on her life. Their relationship had been a whirlwind, 6 months of passionate love that had felt like the beginning of forever. She'd been working as a freelance graphic designer, struggling to build her career while nurturing her dream of becoming a serious artist. He'd been the brilliant young CEO who'd transformed his family's small manufacturing company into a tech empire. They'd met at a gallery opening where her work was being displayed, 3 paintings that represented her tentative entry into the professional art world. He'd stood in front of her largest piece for 20 minutes, studying it with an intensity that had made her nervous and excited in equal measure. "It's extraordinary," he'd said when she'd finally worked up the courage to approach him. "The way you've captured isolation within connection, it's brilliant. Thank you. Most people don't get that piece. Most people don't look closely enough." He'd turned to face her, and she'd felt her world shift on its axis. "I'm Dashiell Thorne, Isadora Salas. And you're staring at my painting like you're trying to solve a puzzle." "Maybe I am. Maybe you're a puzzle I'd like to solve." The line should have been cheesy, but delivered with his genuine intensity and those dark eyes that seemed to see right through her defenses, it had been devastating. Their first date had lasted 14 hours. Dinner that became drinks, that became a walk through the city, that became breakfast, that became an afternoon in his penthouse talking about art and ambition and dreams. She'd never connected with anyone so completely, so immediately. "I could fall in love with you," he'd told her as they watched the sunset from his balcony. "Could," she teased. "Will, I will fall in love with you, Isadora Salas." And he had. For 6 months, they'd built something beautiful, a relationship based on mutual respect, shared dreams, and a passion that left them both breathless. He'd supported her art career, commissioning pieces for his office, introducing her to collectors, helping her navigate the business side of creativity. She'd supported his work too, understanding the pressure he was under to prove himself worthy of the company his grandfather had built. At 29, he was young for a CEO, brilliant but untested in the eyes of the board and shareholders who watched his every move. "Sometimes I feel like I'm performing my life instead of living it," he'd confided one night as they lay in bed, her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. "Then stop performing. Just be. It's not that simple. Everything I do reflects on the company, on hundreds of employees, on shareholders who trust me with their investments." "What about what reflects on you? What about your happiness?" "You make me happy," he'd said, kissing the top of her head. "You're the only real thing in my life." But when the crisis came, when Sterling Industries launched a hostile takeover bid that threatened everything he'd built, the pressure had transformed him. The man who'd once seen her as his anchor became someone who saw her as a distraction he couldn't afford. "I need to focus completely on saving the company," he told her as he packed his belongings from her apartment. I can't be thinking about anyone else right now. I'm not asking you to think about me. I'm asking you to let me help you get through this. You don't understand the kind of pressure I'm under. Then explain it to me. Let me be part of your life instead of something you have to manage around it. This isn't about managing around you. This is about survival. The company, my employees, everything my family built, it's all at stake. And what about us? What about what we built? Us isn't built yet, Isadora. We're just dating. The words had cut deeper than any blade. 6 months of love reduced to just dating in the face of corporate crisis. Is that really how you see this? How you see me? I see you as someone who deserves better than a man who's about to lose everything he's worked for. I see you as someone who's choosing to lose everything he's worked for by pushing away the people who love him. But he'd left anyway, taking his clothes and his promises and his devastating smile, leaving behind only a business card and a shattered heart. 2 weeks later, she'd discovered she was pregnant. By then, the news was full of stories about his successful defense against the takeover, his brilliant maneuvering that had not only saved Thorn Enterprises, but expanded it into new markets. He'd won everything he'd fought for, everything except her. She'd tried to call him, had even gone to his office, but his assistant had been politely implacable. Mr. Thorn is not available for personal calls. If this is business-related, I can schedule an appointment for next month. Next month. As if the father of her child was too busy to take a phone call from the woman he'd claimed to love. Pride had kept her from trying again. If Dashiell wanted to pretend their relationship had never mattered, if he wanted to treat her like a discarded business associate, then she would prove she didn't need him. She would raise their child alone and build a life that didn't depend on anyone else's promises. Except she hadn't been carrying one child. She'd been carrying 4. And now those 4 children, Luna, Nova, Sage, and River, lay fighting for their lives in incubators, needing their father's blood to survive. Now, staring at his business card in the lamplight of her small apartment, Isadora faced a choice that went against every instinct of self-preservation she'd developed over the past 18 months. Call the man who'd broken her heart and beg him to save the children he didn't know existed. She picked up her phone and dialed before she could lose her nerve. The Thorn Enterprises building dominated the downtown skyline like a glass monument to ambition and success. 30 floors of gleaming achievement that pierced the morning clouds while casting long shadows over the streets below. Isadora had only been inside once before, during the early days of their relationship when Dashiell had wanted to show her his world. Now, standing in the marble lobby at 8 a.m. sharp, she felt like a supplicant approaching a throne, armed with nothing but desperation and a mother's fierce love. The phone call the night before had been brief and devastating. Thorn Enterprises, Mr. Thorn's office. I need to speak with Dashiell. It's urgent. Mr. Thorn doesn't take personal calls. If you'd like to schedule an appointment, tell him it's Isadora Salas. Tell him it's a matter of life and death. The pause had been long enough to suggest recognition of her name. Please hold. 5 minutes later, his voice had come on the line, deeper than she remembered, more controlled, but unmistakably him. Isadora, this is unexpected. I need to see you. Tomorrow morning. It's about something that can't wait. I'm not sure that's appropriate. Dashiell, I wouldn't call you if I had any other choice. Please. Another pause, then, my office. 8 a.m. Now, riding the elevator to the 30th floor, Isadora tried to prepare herself for seeing him again. 18 months of carefully constructed indifference threatened to crumble with each floor the elevator climbed. The executive reception area was all sharp lines and expensive surfaces, designed to intimidate visitors and remind them of their place in the hierarchy. The receptionist, a different woman than she remembered, looked up with professional courtesy that didn't reach her eyes. Miss Salas? Mr. Thorn is waiting for you. The walk down the corridor to his corner office felt like a march toward judgment. Memories flashed through her mind. The first time he'd brought her here, how proud he'd been to show her the view, how they'd made love on his desk after hours like teenagers unable to keep their hands off each other. She knocked on the door that was already partially open. Come in. Dashiell Thorn looked up from the documents scattered across his mahogany desk, and time collapsed into nothing. 18 months had been kind to him. He was leaner, more angular, success having carved authority into his features. His dark hair was shorter now, more conservative, and he wore a suit that probably cost more than she made in 3 months. But his eyes were the same, intelligent, intense, and for just a moment before his professional mask slipped into place, vulnerable. Isadora. He stood, his voice carefully neutral. You look well. Thank you for seeing me. You said it was urgent. Life and death, I believe, were your exact words. It is. She remained standing, knowing that sitting would make her feel even smaller in this monument to his success. I need your help, Dashiell. I need you to donate blood. His eyebrows rose slightly. Blood donation? That's not what I was expecting. For babies were born 4 days ago. They're premature, fighting for their lives, and they need immediate blood transfusions. You're the only compatible donor we can find. For babies. Something flickered in his expression. Whose babies? This was the moment. The revelation that would change everything or destroy her last hope of saving her children. Mine, she said simply. My babies. Luna, Nova, Sage, and River. Born at 28 weeks, each one fighting to stay alive. Imagine having to humble yourself before the person who broke your heart to save your children's lives. If Isadora's strength is inspiring you right now, show some love with a like, and tell me in the comments about a time you had to choose love over pride. Dashiell sat down heavily, his composure cracking for the first time since she'd entered his office. You have 4 children? I do. And they're going to die without your blood. Why me? Why my blood specifically? Because they have AB negative blood, an extremely rare type. The genetic compatibility suggests. She paused, watching his face as understanding began to dawn. The genetic compatibility suggests you could be biologically related to them. The silence stretched between them, heavy with 18 months of unspoken truths and the weight of 4 tiny lives hanging in the balance. When, his voice was hoarse. When were they born? 4 days ago, but conceived 18 months ago, Dashiell. Right before you decided our relationship was just dating and walked out of my life. The words hung in the air like an accusation and a confession wrapped into one devastating truth. They're mine, he whispered. They're mine, she corrected firmly. I've raised them alone since the moment I found out I was pregnant. You made your choice 18 months ago. But biologically, they're my children? Yes. Luna, Nova, Sage, and River are your children. And right now, they need their father's blood to survive. Dashiell stared at Isadora across his mahogany desk, the weight of her revelation settling over him like a physical force. For children, his children, dying while he sat in his glass tower, completely oblivious to their existence. How long? His voice was barely above a whisper. How long have you known? I found out I was pregnant 2 weeks after you left. I tried to call you, tried to reach you through your office, but your assistant said you weren't taking personal calls. I never got any messages about. I didn't leave details. I wasn't going to beg you to care about something you'd already made clear you didn't want. Isadora's voice carried 18 months of carefully controlled pain. You told me we were just dating, remember? That was your exact phrase when you walked out. Dashiell closed his eyes, the words he'd spoken in anger and fear coming back to haunt him. I was terrified, Isadora. The company was under attack, everything was falling apart. And I was falling apart too. But I didn't have the luxury of walking away from my problems. I didn't know. You didn't want to know. She leaned forward, her eyes blazing with maternal fury. But that doesn't matter now. What matters is that Luna, Nova, Sage, and River are lying in incubators, their lives hanging by a thread, and you are the only person who can save them. Dashiell stood abruptly, moving to the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city he'd conquered. Somewhere out there, in a hospital he'd driven past countless times, were 4 children who carried his DNA, his blood, his genetic legacy, children who might die because of his cowardice 18 months ago. What do you need me to do? Come to the hospital. Let them test your blood to confirm compatibility. If you match, which the doctors believe you will, donate enough blood for 4 transfusions. That's it. Just donate blood. Isadora was quiet for a long moment. That's all I'm asking for. I'm not asking you to be their father. I'm not asking for child support or recognition or anything else. I'm asking you to save their lives, and then you can go back to your life like they never existed. And if I say no? The question hung in the air like a death sentence. Then I watched my children die, and you live with the knowledge that you could have saved them. Dashiell turned back to face her, seeing clearly for the first time the woman she'd become in his absence. Gone was the soft vulnerability he remembered. This Isadora was steel-wrapped in silk, a mother who would move mountains to protect her children. The artist who'd once painted isolation within connection had learned to be an army of one. "I'll come," he said simply. "When do we need to be there?" "Now." Dr. Cross said they have hours, not days. "Let me clear my calendar, Dashiell." She stood, her small frame somehow commanding the entire room. "This isn't a business meeting you can reschedule. This is life and death. Your children's lives. Your children." The words hit him like lightning, cutting through 18 months of carefully constructed emotional barriers. He'd spent so long focused on building his empire that he'd forgotten about building a legacy that actually mattered. "You're right." He grabbed his jacket and headed for the door. "Let's go save our children." The drive to St. Catherine's Medical Center was the longest 20 minutes of Dashiell's life. He'd insisted on driving, needing something to do with his hands while his mind reeled with the implications of what he'd just learned. Isadora sat in the passenger seat of his Mercedes, her silence speaking volumes about the emotional toll this was taking on her. "Tell me about them," he said as they waited at a red light. "About Luna, Nova, Sage, and River." "Why?" "Because they're my children, and I know nothing about them. Because in 18 months, you've lived a lifetime I missed completely." Isadora was quiet for so long he thought she wasn't going to answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft with love and memory. "Luna was born first. 2 pounds, 3 ounces, but fierce from the moment she arrived. She cried the loudest, fought the hardest to breathe. The nurses say she's a natural leader. She seems to calm the others when they're distressed. She gets that from you. The leadership." Nova came second. Quieter, more thoughtful, but with the strongest vital signs. "She's the one who responds most to music. When I sing to them, she's the first to settle." "What do you sing?" "Lullabies, mostly. Sometimes I make up songs about what they'll be when they grow up, what the world will look like when they're ready to explore it." Her voice caught. "If they get the chance to grow up." "They will. We're going to make sure of it." Sage is the observer. Born third, but she seems to study everything around her. Her eyes open more than the others, and she tracks movement like she's trying to understand how everything works. And River? River is the smallest, but he's got the strongest grip. When I put my finger through the incubator opening, he holds on like he never wants to let go. Tears started flowing down her cheeks. "They're so perfect, Dashiell. So small and perfect and brave. They sound extraordinary. They are. They're everything I never knew I wanted until I had them." Dashiell pulled into the hospital parking garage, his hands trembling slightly as he turned off the engine. "Isadora, before we go in there, I need you to know something." "What?" "I never stopped thinking about you. Not once in 18 months. I told myself I'd made the right choice, that you were better off without me. But every morning I woke up wishing I'd been brave enough to fight for us instead of running away. You looked me in the eye and told me our relationship didn't matter enough to survive a crisis. I was wrong. I was terrified of losing the company, terrified of proving my father right when he said I wasn't strong enough to handle pressure. But losing you was the real failure. I needed you. I was pregnant and scared and alone, and I needed the man who claimed to love me. And I failed you. I failed all of you." He turned to face her fully. "But I'm here now. Whatever happens after today, whatever you decide about my role in their lives, I'm here now when it matters most. Being here now doesn't erase 18 months of abandonment. No, it doesn't. But maybe it's a start toward earning forgiveness I don't deserve." The NICU at St. Catherine's was unlike anything Dashiell had ever experienced. The controlled chaos of life-saving technology, the hushed voices of medical professionals, the steady beeping of machines monitoring the most vulnerable patients in the hospital. It was a world where miracles and heartbreak existed side by side. Dr. Cross met them at the entrance, her expression professional but urgent. "Mr. Thorne, thank you for coming so quickly. I need to get blood samples immediately to confirm compatibility and cross-match for transfusions. Whatever you need." "The baby's condition has deteriorated in the past hour. We're looking at immediate transfusions once we confirm your blood is compatible." As they drew his blood for testing, Dashiell found himself asking questions he'd never thought he'd need to know the answers to. What are their chances? With the transfusions? If your blood is compatible, which preliminary tests strongly suggest, the success rate is excellent. These babies are fighters, Mr. Thorne. They just need the right ammunition for the fight. And without the transfusions, Dr. Cross met his eyes directly. Without intervention in the next few hours, we'll lose them. The blood test results came back within 30 minutes, a perfect match across all compatibility markers. Dr. Cross looked genuinely amazed as she reviewed the results. I've never seen genetic compatibility this strong between a donor and recipient. You're not just a match, Mr. Thorne, you're a perfect match. These babies couldn't have a better donor if we designed one specifically for them. Because he's their father, Isadora said quietly. That explains it. Paternal blood has unique advantages for premature infants. Mr. Thorne, are you ready to proceed? Yes, but first. He looked at Isadora. Can I see them? Can I see our children before the procedure? I don't think that's a good idea, please. I know I have no right to ask, but I need to see them. I need to understand what I'm fighting for. Isadora studied his face, looking for manipulation or false sentiment, but all she saw was genuine fear and desperate hope. 5 minutes. They're very fragile, and any disruption to their environment could be dangerous. The walk to the NICU felt like a journey to another world. Through the glass walls, Dashiell got his first glimpse of Luna, Nova, Sage, and River, four impossibly small human beings surrounded by machines that dwarfed their tiny bodies. They're so small, he whispered. Premature babies always look smaller than you expect. But look at their faces, Dashiell. Really look at them. He did look, and what he saw stopped his heart. For perfect faces that were unmistakably his, the shape of their eyes, the set of their jaws, the way Luna's hand curled into a fist exactly like his did when he was thinking. These weren't just children who needed his blood. They were his children, his genetic legacy, his chance at a kind of immortality he'd never considered. Luna looks like you did in the baby pictures your mother showed me, Isadora said softly. They all look like us, like the best parts of both of us. They're fighting so hard, Dashiell. Every breath is a battle, but they keep fighting. Because they're ours. Because they inherited your strength and my stubbornness. Dr. Cross appeared beside them. Mr. Thorne, we need to begin the donation process immediately. Are you ready? I'm ready. This is what real transformation looks like. A man discovering that his greatest success isn't in business, but in the 4 tiny lives he helped create. If this journey is touching your heart, hit that subscribe button and share this story with someone who needs to believe in second chances. The blood donation process took 3 hours. Longer than usual because they needed significant quantities for 4 separate transfusions. Dashiell lay on the hospital bed, watching his blood flow through tubes toward bags that would save his children's lives, feeling more useful than he had in 18 months of corporate achievements. How are you feeling? Nurse Kira asked as she monitored his vital signs. Like I'm finally doing something that matters. Donating blood to save 4 babies? I'd say that matters quite a bit. They're my children. I didn't know they existed until this morning. Nurse Kira's eyebrows rose. That must be overwhelming. It is, but also clarifying. For the first time in years, I know exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. Through the window, he could see into the NICU where Isadora sat between the incubators, reading to their children from a book of poetry. Her voice was too soft to hear, but he could see the love in her posture, the way she leaned toward each baby as if willing her strength into their tiny bodies. She's an extraordinary mother, Nurse Kira observed, following his gaze. She always was extraordinary. I was just too blind to see it. Well, you're here now. That's what matters to those babies. Is it enough? Being here now? For them? Absolutely. For her? That's not my place to say. When the donation was complete, Dashiell felt weak but oddly energized. His blood was immediately taken to the lab for final preparation while the medical team prepared the babies for their transfusions. We'll do them simultaneously, Dr. Cross explained as they moved toward the NICU. All 4 babies will receive transfusions at the same time to minimize stress and maximize the effectiveness of the procedure. Can we watch? From the observation area? But I want both of you to be prepared. This is a delicate procedure, and the babies may appear distressed during the process. Standing in the observation area, watching 4 teams of medical professionals work to save his children, Dashiell felt something fundamental shift inside him. This wasn't about him anymore. It wasn't about his company, his reputation, his carefully constructed life. It was about Luna, Nova, Sage, and River, and making sure they had the chance to grow up and discover who they were meant to become. The transfusions are going perfectly, Dr. Cross announced after an hour. All 4 babies are responding beautifully to the new blood. Their oxygen levels are improving, their color is better, and their vital signs are stabilizing. They're going to be okay? Isadora asked, her voice breaking with relief. More than okay. With these transfusions, their prognosis is excellent. They'll need to stay in the NICU for several more weeks as they grow and develop, but there's no reason they can't live completely normal, healthy lives. Isadora sank into a chair, 18 months of single motherhood and 4 days of terror finally catching up with her. Dashiell wanted to comfort her, to hold her like he used to, but he wasn't sure he had the right anymore. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for saving them. Thank you for giving them life. For carrying them and protecting them and loving them when I wasn't there to do it. What happens now, Dashiell? What do you want from this?" "I want to be their father. Not just biologically, but really be their father. I want to learn their personalities, their preferences, their dreams. I want to be the man they can count on, the father they deserve. And us? What about us? I want to earn your forgiveness. I want to prove that I'm not the same man who walked away 18 months ago. I want to build something real with you, if you'll let me. I don't know if I can trust you again. I know. But Isadora, watching our children fight for their lives today, seeing what you've accomplished in raising them alone, I know now what really matters. Not the company, not success, not anything except the people we love." Pretty words, Dashiell. But you said pretty words before, too. Then let me prove it with actions. Let me show you that I've changed. Over the next 3 weeks, as Luna, Nova, Sage, and River grew stronger in the NICU, Dashiell restructured his entire life around being present for his family. He moved meetings, delegated responsibilities, and for the first time in his career, put family before business. Every morning, he arrived at the hospital with coffee for Isadora and updates on the company that she pretended not to care about, but secretly found reassuring. Every evening, he stayed until visiting hours ended, learning to change diapers that seemed impossibly small, reading to children who couldn't yet understand words but seemed to recognize his voice. "Luna opened her eyes when you were reading yesterday," Isadora observed one morning as they watched their daughter sleep peacefully. "She's the most alert of the 4. Always seems to be studying everything around her. Like someone else I know. Is that good or bad? It's you, Dashiell. She's got your intensity, your need to understand how everything works. And Nova. Nova's got your calm confidence. Even when the alarms go off, she stays steady. River has your determination. He's the smallest, but he fights the hardest. And Sage. What about Sage? Sage has your heart. She responds to emotions more than the others. When I'm sad, she gets restless. When I'm happy, she settles. She's going to be the empath of the group. They're all so different. Identical genetics, completely different personalities. Dr. Cross says that's normal for multiple births, but it's amazing to watch. What kind of mother are you? What do they get from you?" Isadora smiled, the first genuine smile he'd seen from her since the hospital ordeal began. Their creativity, hopefully. Their sense of humor. Their ability to find beauty in difficult situations. Their strength. Their resilience. Their capacity for love. We'll see. They're still so young. So much of who they'll become is still ahead of them. "I want to be there for all of it," Dashiell said quietly. "First words, first steps, first days of school, first heartbreaks, college graduations, weddings. I want to be the father they can count on for everything." That's a big commitment for someone who's never been a parent before. The biggest commitment of my life. Bigger than the company. Bigger than anything I've ever promised anyone. And if it gets difficult, if they're sick, or the sleep deprivation gets to you, or the demands of 4 children become overwhelming, then I'll figure it out. Because that's what fathers do, they figure it out. Even if it means sacrificing business opportunities, even if it means missing important meetings or turning down lucrative deals. Especially then. "Isadora, I've spent 10 years building a company, and what do I have to show for it? Money, success, recognition, all things that don't matter when you're alone at night wondering if you've wasted your life. The company matters to you. The company is a tool, a means to provide for our family, to build something that Luna, Nova, Sage, and River can inherit if they want it. But it's not more important than being present for their lives. Pretty words again. Then test me. Challenge me. Put me in situations where I have to choose between business and family, and watch what I choose. The test came sooner than either of them expected. 2 days later, as Dashiell was holding River for the first time, the baby finally strong enough for skin-to-skin contact, his phone rang with an emergency call from his assistant. "Mr. Thorne, I'm sorry to interrupt, but the Morrison deal is falling apart. They want to meet tonight, or they're walking away. This could cost us $40 million. Dashiell looked down at River, whose tiny hand was wrapped around his finger with surprising strength, then at Isadora, who was watching his face carefully. "Tell Morrison I'm not available tonight. Reschedule for tomorrow." "Sir, they said it has to be tonight or never." "Then it's never. I'm with my family tonight." He hung up the phone and met Isadora's eyes. $40 million? She asked quietly. $40 million, that doesn't matter as much as this moment with our son. Your board won't be happy. My board will adjust. This is my priority now. For the first time since he'd returned to her life, Isadora looked at him with something approaching hope. "You really have changed. Being a father changes everything. These 4 little people are more important than any business deal I'll ever make. Even when they're teenagers and hate you? Especially then." Luna, Nova, Sage, and River were finally released from the NICU 6 weeks after their birth, weighing between 4 and 5 pounds each and deemed healthy enough to continue their development at home. The day they left the hospital was both triumphant and terrifying, for babies going home to a life that had been completely transformed by their existence. Dashiell had spent the previous week baby-proofing Isadora's small apartment and setting up 4 cribs in the converted bedroom that would serve as their nursery. The space was cramped but filled with love, every corner designed around the needs of 4 growing children. "Are you sure about this?" Isadora asked as they loaded car seats into his Mercedes, a car that was completely impractical for a family of 6, but somehow made the moment feel more real. "Sure about what?" "Taking our children home. Sure about all of it. The sleepless nights, the constant feedings, the chaos of 4 babies who won't be on the same schedule no matter how hard we try. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. This isn't a business problem you can solve with strategy and determination, Dashiell. This is going to be messy and exhausting and sometimes thankless. Good. I'm tired of clean and efficient and profitable. I want messy and exhausting and meaningful." The first night home was everything Isadora had warned him about and more. For babies with different feeding schedules, different sleep patterns, different needs that seemed to require attention at precisely the moment they'd managed to get one of the others settled. At 3 a.m., with Luna crying, Nova needing a diaper change, Sage refusing to settle, and River demanding attention, Dashiell stood in the middle of the nursery, feeling completely overwhelmed. "I don't know what I'm doing," he admitted to Isadora, who was bouncing Luna while simultaneously trying to warm a bottle. "Welcome to parenthood. None of us know what we're doing. How did you manage this alone? Even for the short time before they were born, how did you prepare for 4 babies by yourself?" "I didn't prepare. I just kept moving forward and hoped I'd figure it out as I went." "Were you scared? Terrified? Every single day?" "But also excited, because I knew they were going to be extraordinary. They are extraordinary. And they're ours. All of ours, if you're really committed to this." "I'm committed. To them. To you. To building the family we should have had from the beginning." 3 months later, the chaos had settled into something resembling a routine. For babies who were thriving, growing, developing their distinct personalities in ways that amazed both their parents daily. Luna had become the leader of the group, first to roll over, first to focus on faces, first to smile with genuine recognition. Nova was the entertainer, making sounds and expressions that suggested a sense of humor was already developing. Sage was the observer, tracking movement and studying faces with an intensity that reminded everyone of her father. River was the charmer, smiling at anyone who paid attention to him and already showing signs of being the most social of the 4. "They're starting to interact with each other," Isadora observed one evening as they watched the babies lying on a blanket together. Look, Luna keeps reaching toward Nova. And Sage is watching everything they do. She's going to be the one who keeps them all in line. River's already trying to roll toward the others. He doesn't want to be left out of anything. They're going to be best friends and worst enemies, aren't they? Probably both, depending on the day. Dashiell had transformed his life completely around fatherhood. The penthouse apartment sat empty while he lived in Isadora's small space, learning that happiness had nothing to do with square footage and everything to do with the people who filled the space with laughter and love. His business thrived under his new management style, more efficient because he was more focused, more profitable because he was more strategic about which opportunities were worth pursuing. The board had initially been concerned about his new priorities, but when quarterly profits increased despite his reduced hours, they learned to trust his judgment. "I have something to ask you," he said one evening as they finally got all 4 babies to sleep at the same time. "If it's about moving to a bigger place, I'm not ready for that conversation yet. It's not about space. It's about us." Isadora looked up from the baby monitor she was adjusting, her expression cautious. "What about us? I want to marry you. Not because of the babies, not because it's practical or convenient, but because I love you. Because you're the strongest, most extraordinary woman I've ever known, and I want to spend the rest of my life proving I'm worthy of you. Dashiell, I know I hurt you. I know I have to earn your trust back. But Isadora, these past few months, watching you be a mother, working together to raise our children, I've fallen in love with you all over again. Deeper than before, because now I know what really matters. And what really matters? This. Family. Love. Building something that lasts beyond quarterly reports and stock prices. Marriage is a big step. Bigger than having 4 children together. Fair point. I'm not asking for an answer tonight. I'm just asking you to think about it. Think about whether you can see a future where we're partners in everything, raising our children, building our lives, growing old together. I'll think about it. That's all I can ask for. 6 months later, on a perfect autumn day with 4 6-month-old babies as their witnesses, Isadora and Dashiell were married in the same hospital chapel where they'd prayed for their children's lives. It was a small ceremony, just family and the medical staff who had become extended family during their NICU journey. Do you, Dashiell, take Isadora to be your wife, to love and cherish in sickness and health, for richer or poorer, in good times and bad, for as long as you both shall live? I do. I absolutely do. Do you, Isadora, take Dashiell to be your husband, to love and cherish in sickness and health, for richer or poorer, in good times and bad, for as long as you both shall live? Isadora looked at the man who had broken her heart, and then spent months healing it with patience, consistency, and unconditional love for their children. I do, as they kissed to seal their commitment. For babies who had survived against impossible odds bore witness to the love story they had made possible. Luna, Nova, Sage, and River, living proof that sometimes the greatest gifts come from the most unexpected places, and that love has the power to transform even the most broken hearts. Epilogue. 1 year later, the Thorne family, Dashiell, Isadora, and quadruplets Luna, Nova, Sage, and River, had moved into a sprawling house with enough space for 4 growing children and the chaos that came with them. The home was filled with laughter, the sound of tiny feet learning to walk, and the happy chaos of a family that had been forged in crisis and tempered by love. They're walking. Isadora called from the living room one morning. All 4 of them, at the same time. Dashiell rushed in from the kitchen to find Luna, Nova, Sage, and River taking tentative steps toward each other, their faces bright with the joy of discovery. Of course they're walking together, he laughed. They do everything together. Just like they came into the world together, they're conquering it together. Think they'll always be this close? I hope so. They saved each other's lives just by existing. That kind of bond doesn't break easily. Dashiell pulled Isadora into his arms, watching their children explore their world with fearless curiosity. Do you ever regret it? The way everything happened? The separation? Your leaving? All of it. The pain, the fear, the months of raising them alone. Isadora considered the question seriously. I regret the pain. I regret that you missed the pregnancy, that you weren't there for their birth. But I don't regret the journey that brought us here. Why not? Because this version of us, the parents we became, the partners we are now, I don't think we could have gotten here without going through everything we went through. The man I fell in love with 8 years ago wasn't ready to be the father Luna, Nova, Sage, and River needed. The woman I was then wasn't strong enough to be their mother. And now we're exactly who we're supposed to be. A family. The best kind of family. One that chose to be together. One that fought for each other. One that learned that love isn't always easy, but it's always worth it. As they watched their children take their first independent steps into the world, Dashiell marveled at the journey that had brought them to this moment. A phone call that had shattered his carefully constructed life had turned out to be the call that saved it. For tiny babies who had needed his blood to survive, had given him something to live for that was bigger than himself. Sometimes our greatest gifts come disguised as our greatest challenges. Dashiell learned that success without family is just an expensive way to be alone. Isadora discovered that protecting your children sometimes means risking your own heart again. Their story teaches us that love isn't always about perfect timing. Sometimes it's about perfect courage when it matters most. What relationship needs healing in your life? What pride are you holding on to that's keeping you from the love you deserve? If this story inspired you to choose vulnerability over safety, show it with a like. Subscribe for more powerful stories about love and redemption, and share this with someone who needs to remember that it's never too late to fight for your family.